The great chamber stretched out like a metal cathedral. 12 different alien species sat in floating seats that moved through the air without sound. Each species looked different from the others. Some were made of crystal that caught the light. Others looked like walking metal machines. A few seemed to be made of pure energy that flickered and danced. At the center of it all stood Sarah Chen. She was human. She was also very alone. Sarah wore her best diplomatic uniform. The blue fabric felt heavy on her shoulders. In her hands, she held a datapad that contained years of work, every human achievement, every discovery, every reason why humanity deserved to join the Galactic Council as full members. She had practiced this speech 1,000 times. She knew every word by heart. But standing here with 12 ancient alien civilizations staring down at her, the words felt small and weak. The Zephyrian representative spoke first. Its crystal body rang like a bell when it moved. Human Ambassador Chen, your species has requested full membership in the Galactic Council. We have reviewed your petition. Sarah's heart beat faster. This was the moment her entire species had been waiting for. Humanity had been part of the galaxy for 50 years now. They had followed every rule. They had proven themselves in small ways. They had earned the right to be here. The Council has reached a decision, the Zephyrian continued. Another alien floated forward. This one was tall and thin, with skin that looked like black metal. It was Counselor Vextar from the Hegemony. The Hegemony had ruled part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. When Vextar spoke, other species listened. Humans are too young, Vextar said. His voice sounded like grinding metal. Your species has only been traveling between stars for a few decades. We have been doing this for thousands of years. Sarah felt something cold form in her stomach. This was not going the way she had hoped. You are too violent, added another voice. This came from the collective, a species that shared one mind across millions of bodies. We have studied your history, wars, nuclear weapons. You destroyed your own planet's environment. This is not the behavior of a civilized species. More voices joined in. Each one listed another reason why humanity was not ready. Too primitive. Too emotional. Too unpredictable. Too different. Sarah listened to each criticism. She had heard them all before. Every human diplomat had faced these same arguments. But hearing them now in this official setting made them feel like physical blows. The worst part was the laughter. It started with the energy beings called the Luxari. Their laughter sounded like electricity crackling. Then the crystal Zephyrians joined in with their bell-like sounds. Soon most of the council was laughing at humanity's request. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, Vextar said when the laughter died down. When your species has learned to control its violent nature. When you have proven you can think beyond your own small world. When you have something valuable to offer the galaxy. Sarah felt her hand shake. Not from fear, from anger. Pure, burning anger. She thought about Earth. About the billions of humans who had worked so hard to reach this moment. She thought about the scientists who had given their lives to develop faster-than-light travel. She thought about the explorers who had died on distant worlds. She thought about the children who dreamed of meeting alien friends among the stars. All of that hope. All of that work. All of that sacrifice. And these ancient beings dismissed it with laughter. Sarah looked up at the floating alien representatives. Her voice came out steady and calm. But underneath the calm was something else. Something dangerous. You judge us by our past, she said, not by what we could become. You see violence where we see determination. You call us young, but we have survived things that would have broken your ancient civilizations. The chamber grew quiet. The aliens were not used to being challenged by junior species. Sarah took a step forward. We came here asking to join you as equals. We thought you would see the value in having fresh ideas, new perspectives, young energy to help solve old problems. She looked directly at Vextar. But you don't want equals. You want servants. You want species that will bow down and follow your ancient rules without question. Young human, Vextar began, but Sarah cut him off. We withdraw our petition, she said. Her voice carried across the entire chamber. Humanity will not beg for a place at your table. The aliens looked surprised. They had expected anger, but not this kind of controlled fury. Sarah's next words would echo through the galaxy for decades to come. But know this, she said. We make a vow before this council. We will prove our worth. We will show you what humanity is truly capable of. She paused. The chamber was completely silent now, and when we return to these halls it will not be as petitioners. It will not be as beggars asking for scraps from your table. Her eyes seemed to burn with inner fire. It will be as your equals, or as your betters. The silence stretched on for long seconds. Then Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter. Empty threats from a child species, he said. Run back to your small corner of the galaxy, human. Play with your primitive toys. When you have grown up, perhaps we will listen to you again. Sarah smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. We'll see, she said. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Behind her, the aliens began talking among themselves. Most of them sounded amused. They had heard angry words from rejected species before. Young civilizations always made big promises when they were upset, but a few of the older aliens felt something else. A chill that ran through their ancient minds. There had been something in the human's voice. Something in her eyes, something that spoke of dangerous possibilities. The Zephyrian representative rang like a cracked bell. Perhaps we should watch the humans more carefully, it said. Why? Asked Vextar. They are nothing. They have no real technology, no special abilities, no ancient wisdom. What could they possibly do to threaten us? Far across the galaxy, Sarah Chen sat in her small ship as it jumped to faster than light speed. She was heading home to Earth. In her hands was a message that would change everything. The message was simple. They said no. Activate Prometheus. On Earth, deep in hidden laboratories, scientists received the message. They had been waiting for this day, hoping it would never come, but preparing for it anyway. Humanity had been rejected. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped trying to fit in and started trying to stand out. The ancient aliens thought they knew what to expect. They had seen angry young species before. They always followed the same pattern. Big words, small actions, and then acceptance of their place in the cosmic order. They were about to learn that humans did not follow patterns. They were about to discover that when humans made a vow, they meant it. And they were about to find out what happened when the most stubborn, creative, and dangerous species in the galaxy decided to prove a point. The countdown to humanity's return had begun. The news spread through human space like wildfire. Sarah Chen's message reached every human colony, space station, and ship within days. The Galactic Council had rejected humanity's petition for membership. Worse, they had laughed while doing it. The reaction was swift and surprising. Within weeks, human ships began leaving alien space. Trade agreements that had taken years to negotiate were canceled overnight. Human scientists working in alien laboratories packed their equipment and left. Diplomatic missions closed their doors and headed home. The galaxy barely noticed at first. Humans had always been on the edges of civilized space. They were useful for their ability to adapt to different environments. Some alien species enjoyed watching human entertainment or studying human culture, but they were not essential to galactic civilization. The Zephyrians continued their endless philosophical debates. The collective expanded its shared consciousness to new worlds. The Luxari pursued their experiments with pure energy. The hegemony managed its vast territories with the same efficiency it had used for thousands of years, but Dr. Elena Vasquez noticed something strange. Elena was one of the few humans who stayed in council space. She worked as a xenobiologist on the research station at Kepler 442. Her job was to study how different alien species evolved. She had spent 15 years building relationships with alien scientists. When the withdrawal began, she was allowed to stay because her work was considered valuable. At first, the changes were small. Human ships that used to pass through the system once a week stopped coming. Trade convoys that carried human goods found new routes that avoided alien space entirely. The few humans who remained kept to themselves and spoke less in the research meetings. Then Elena started receiving strange messages from her human colleagues. Scientists she had worked with for years sent her cryptic notes. "The project is bigger than we thought," wrote Dr. Kim from the Tau Ceti system. "We're discovering things that will change everything," said Dr. Santos from Proxima Centauri. When Elena tried to ask for more details, the messages stopped coming. Elena began paying closer attention to what was happening in human space. She used her access to galactic communication networks to track human ship movements. What she found worried her. Human space was becoming a black hole of information. Ships entered human territory but never reported their destinations. Entire star systems went dark for months. then suddenly burst with massive energy signatures. Construction projects appeared in deep space, but no alien scouts could get close enough to see what was being built. Elena tried to send her own research probes into human space. They stopped working the moment they crossed the border. The probes didn't explode or get destroyed. They just stopped. Their signals cut off completely as if they had never existed. Something is happening, Elena told her alien colleagues. The humans are planning something big. The alien scientists were not concerned. Young species often have tantrums when they are rejected, said Professor Zixtel, a Zephyrian researcher. They build weapons or fortifications. They make threats they cannot keep. Eventually, they accept their place in the galaxy. This feels different, Elena insisted. I've worked with humans for 15 years. They don't give up easily, and they're too smart to waste time on simple revenge. But the aliens had seen this pattern before. Throughout galactic history, young civilizations had reacted badly to rejection. The Karathi had built a massive fleet after being turned down for council membership. The Xerian Empire had tried to conquer 3 star systems. The Nathari had isolated themselves for 200 years before finally asking to rejoin galactic society. All of them had eventually accepted their place as junior members of the galactic community. The humans would do the same. Meanwhile, in human space, something unprecedented was happening. Every human colony had received the same message along with Sarah Chen's report. Project Prometheus is now active. All human resources are to be directed toward the goal. No exceptions, no delays, no limits. The goal was simple to state but almost impossible to achieve. Humanity would prove that the aliens were wrong about everything. Not just wrong about humans, but wrong about the basic nature of civilization itself. Dr. James Kim led a team on Kepler 442b, the first human colony outside Earth's solar system. Before the rejection, his team had been working on improved computer processors. After the rejection, they received new instructions and unlimited funding. Forget computers, the message said. Forget technology as the aliens understand it. Think bigger. Think different. Think human. Dr. Kim's team began studying something the aliens had never seriously considered: the connection between consciousness and quantum mechanics. They discovered that human brains, with their chaotic and emotional thought patterns, could influence quantum fields in ways that alien minds could not. Dr. Maria Santos worked in the Proxima system on what had been a simple biological research station. After Project Prometheus began, her team received shipments of genetic samples from every human world. They also received a new mission: push human evolution beyond its natural limits. The aliens think biology is separate from technology, her new instructions read. Prove them wrong. Show them what humans can become when we stop accepting limits. Dr. Santos began working on ways to merge human consciousness with technology at the cellular level. Not crude cybernetic implants like other species used, but true biological integration. Humans who could become their ships. Humans who could exist as part of a planetary ecosystem. Humans who could share consciousness across vast distances without any external technology. On Earth itself, the greatest minds of humanity worked on the most ambitious project of all. They were trying to understand consciousness itself, not just human consciousness, but the fundamental nature of awareness in the universe. The team was led by Dr. Sarah Okafor, who had been studying human psychology before the rejection. Now she had access to volunteers from across human space, pilots who could navigate by intuition, engineers who solved problems in their dreams, artists who seemed to create new realities with their imagination. The aliens think consciousness is just a side effect of complex brains, Dr. Okafor wrote in her encrypted reports. They see it as useful but not fundamental. We're going to prove that consciousness is the most fundamental force in the universe, and humans might be the first species to figure out how to use it properly. Throughout human space, similar projects were underway. Children born after the rejection showed abilities that previous generations had never possessed. They could communicate without speaking. They could sense things happening on distant worlds. Some could even affect physical reality just by concentrating hard enough. The aliens monitoring the borders of human space detected energy signatures they couldn't explain. They saw construction projects that seemed to violate basic physics. They recorded communication signals that appeared to travel faster than light itself. But they explained it all away as primitive human experimentation. Young species often tried impossible projects when they were upset. The humans would exhaust themselves with these futile efforts and eventually give up. Elena Vasquez was one of the few who understood that something fundamental was changing. She sent increasingly urgent reports to the Galactic Council. "The humans aren't building weapons," she wrote. "They're not preparing for war. They're doing something else, something we don't understand, something that might change everything we think we know about how the universe works." Her reports were filed away and forgotten. The Council had more important things to worry about than the hurt feelings of a rejected junior species. 7 years after the rejection, Elena received one final message from human space. It came from Sarah Chen herself. "Thank you for trying to warn them," the message said, "but they won't listen until it's too late. When we return, things will be different. Very different. I hope you'll understand that we never wanted it to be this way." After that, human space went completely silent. No ships entered or left. No signals came out. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. The aliens assumed this meant the humans had given up. They thought humanity had exhausted itself with impossible projects and retreated to lick their wounds. They had no idea that the silence meant the opposite. It meant Project Prometheus was complete. It meant humanity was ready to fulfill their vow. It meant the galaxy was about to change forever. 15 years had passed since humanity withdrew from galactic society. 15 years of silence from human space. 15 years that changed everything. Dr. James Kim stood in his laboratory on Kepler 442b, but the room around him no longer looked like any laboratory the galaxy had ever seen. There were no computers, no machines, no traditional technology at all. Instead, the walls seemed to pulse with soft light that responded to his thoughts. The air itself felt alive, aware, ready to change based on his will. James had discovered something the aliens never expected. Human consciousness could directly affect quantum fields, not through machines or technology, but through pure focused intention combined with emotion. The breakthrough came during the 3rd year of isolation. James had been working 18-hour days, trying to understand why human thought patterns were so different from alien minds. Other species thought in logical, organized ways. Their consciousness was neat and orderly, like well-designed machines. Human consciousness was chaotic. It jumped between ideas. It was full of emotions that seemed to serve no logical purpose. The aliens saw this as a weakness, a sign that humans were primitive and unfocused. James discovered it was humanity's greatest strength. The chaos in human minds created quantum fluctuations that other species couldn't produce. Human emotions generated energy fields that could influence matter at the subatomic level. When a human focused their will with enough intensity, reality itself would bend to accommodate their intention. The first successful test happened by accident. James had been working for 36 hours straight, trying to solve a complex equation. He was exhausted, frustrated, and angry at his lack of progress. In a moment of pure fury, he shouted at the equation and slammed his hand on the desk. The equation solved itself. The numbers on his display rearranged themselves into the correct answer. The computer had not calculated anything. The mathematics had simply changed to match what James needed them to be. Over the following months, James learned to control this ability. He could reshape matter by imagining it differently. He could create energy by focusing his emotions. He could even affect things on distant worlds by thinking about them with enough intensity. But James was not the only one making impossible discoveries. Dr. Maria Santos, working in the Proxima system, had made her own breakthrough. She had been trying to merge human biology with technology, but her experiments kept failing. Traditional cybernetic implants were rejected by human immune systems. Genetic modifications caused unexpected side effects. Then Maria tried something different. Instead of forcing technology into human bodies, she tried teaching human cells to become technology. The human genome, she discovered, was far more flexible than anyone had realized. Human DNA could be convinced to create structures that shouldn't exist. Human cells could be trained to perform functions that no biological system should be able to handle. Maria's first success was a volunteer named David Chen, Sarah Chen's younger brother. David allowed Maria to modify his nervous system at the genetic level. The changes took 6 months to complete, but when they were finished, David had become something new. He could interface directly with any computer system just by touching it. He could process information at speeds that no biological brain should achieve. He could even exist partially as digital consciousness, uploading parts of his mind to computer networks while his body remained in the real world. But the most amazing discovery was that David could share his consciousness with other modified humans. They became a network of minds that could think and act as one, while still maintaining their individual personalities. Within 2 years, hundreds of humans had volunteered for similar modifications. Each person became a node in a growing network of enhanced consciousness. They could share memories, thoughts, and abilities instantly across any distance. The network grew stronger with each new member. They began developing abilities that even Maria couldn't explain. Some could exist in multiple places at once. Others could manipulate matter at the molecular level just by thinking about it. A few could even step partially outside normal space-time, existing in dimensions that regular humans couldn't perceive. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Sarah Okafor was making the most disturbing discovery of all. Sarah had been studying the children born after humanity's rejection. These children, born into a world focused on transcending limitations, showed abilities that defied explanation. The first sign was their communication. Children as young as 3 could speak to each other without words, even when separated by vast distances. They seemed to share a collective awareness that connected them to every other human child in the galaxy. But as they grew older, their abilities became more pronounced. They could see things that were happening on distant worlds. They could predict future events with startling accuracy. Some could even influence probability itself, making unlikely things become certain just by wanting them strongly enough. The most gifted children could do things that seemed like magic. They could make objects appear out of nothing. They could heal injuries by touching them. They could even bring dead plants back to life just by caring about them strongly enough. Sarah realized that these children represented the next stage of human evolution. They were being born with abilities that adults had to struggle for years to develop. Each generation was more powerful than the last. But the children's greatest ability was their capacity to teach others. When they focused their attention on an adult human, they could awaken similar abilities. The process was faster and more complete than any technological enhancement. By the 10th year of isolation, the children had awakened abilities in millions of adult humans. What had started as small research projects had become a species-wide transformation. Throughout human space, impossible things were becoming routine. Humans could travel between stars without ships, simply by thinking themselves to their destination. They could create food and materials out of pure energy. They could heal any injury or disease by focusing their will on the problem. But perhaps most importantly, they could exist as pure consciousness when they chose to. Death became optional. Human minds could continue to exist and grow even when their physical bodies were destroyed. The aliens monitoring the borders of human space detected energy signatures that broke their understanding of physics. They recorded phenomena that their science said were impossible. They observed construction projects that seemed to be creating matter from nothing, but they explained it all as primitive human experiments with dangerous forces. They assumed the humans would eventually destroy themselves with these reckless attempts to exceed their natural limitations. They didn't understand that humans had already exceeded every limitation the galaxy thought was universal. Elena Vasquez, still working on her research station in alien space, received increasingly strange reports from her automated sensors. Energy readings from human space suggested that entire star systems were being restructured. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared without explanation. New planets seemed to be created from nothing. "It's impossible," she told her alien colleagues. "The energy requirements alone should have destroyed them. No known technology could do what they appear to be doing." "Exactly," said Professor Zixtel, "which proves that the readings are false. The humans are probably using some kind of jamming technology to create false sensor readings. They want us to think they have become more powerful than they really are." But Elena knew humans better than that. She knew they didn't waste time on deception when they could invest that energy in actually solving problems. In the 15th year of isolation, Elena received a personal message from Sarah Chen. The message was transmitted using no known technology. It simply appeared in Elena's mind while she was sleeping. "We kept our promise," Sarah's voice said inside Elena's thoughts. "We proved what humans could become when we stopped trying to fit into the galaxy's expectations of us." We transcended every limitation your people thought was universal. Elena woke up with a start. The message had felt more real than any dream, but she was alone in her quarters. Her communication equipment showed no record of any incoming transmission. Tomorrow we return to the council. Sarah's voice continued in Elena's memory, not as the primitive species they rejected, not as angry children seeking revenge. We return as something the galaxy has never seen before. Elena felt a chill run through her body. She had spent 15 years watching human space from a distance. She had seen the impossible energy readings and unexplained phenomena. She had tried to warn the galactic community that something unprecedented was happening. Now she realized that she had still underestimated what humans were capable of achieving. The next day, Elena sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council. "They're coming back," she wrote, "and we have no idea what they've become." The message was filed away with all her previous warnings. The council was busy with more important matters than the concerns of one xenobiologist about a rejected junior species. They had no idea that their comfortable, ancient civilization was about to encounter something that would change the meaning of existence itself. Humanity had kept their vow. They had proven their worth. Now the galaxy would learn what that really meant. The great chamber of the Galactic Council looked exactly the same as it had 24 years ago. The same floating seats moved through the air in their ancient patterns. The same 12 species sat in judgment over the younger civilizations of the galaxy. The same sense of timeless authority filled the vast space. Councillor Vextar had grown old, even by hegemony standards. His metal-like skin had dulled with age, and his movements were slower than they once were. But his voice still carried the weight of 10,000 years of galactic authority when he called the Millennium Session to order. "The Council recognizes no new business," he announced. "We shall proceed with the standard review of territorial disputes and trade agreements." That was when she walked in. Sarah Chen entered the chamber as if 24 years had been 24 minutes. She looked exactly the same as she had during humanity's rejection. Not a day older, not a hair out of place. Her diplomatic uniform was the same style, but now it seemed to shimmer with light that came from nowhere. The alien representatives fell silent. Several of them remembered her angry words from decades ago. A few had even wondered occasionally what had happened to the rejected human species, but none had expected to see their ambassador again. Sarah walked to the center of the chamber with confident steps, but something was wrong with how she moved. Reality seemed to bend slightly around her, as if space itself was acknowledging her presence. The air shimmered where she passed. "Honored counselors," Sarah said. Her voice was heard perfectly by every being in the chamber, even though she spoke at normal volume. The words seemed to arrive directly in their minds rather than traveling through the air. "Humanity returns to request—" "No." She paused and smiled. "To claim our rightful place among you." Vextar struggled to speak. His ancient mind tried to process what he was seeing. "Impossible. Your species was rejected. You have no right to appear before this council without an invitation." Sarah raised her hand slightly. Vextar stopped talking. Not because he chose to stop, but because the words simply ceased to exist in his mind. He knew he had been speaking, but he couldn't remember what he had been trying to say. "Let me show you what we have become," Sarah said gently. The chamber transformed. Every council member suddenly found themselves experiencing human history. Not watching it, but living it. They felt the pain of every human who had ever been born. They experienced the determination of every explorer who had left Earth to find new worlds. They felt the love of every parent who had sacrificed for their children. They experienced the fury of every warrior who had fought to protect what they believed in. They lived through humanity's first steps into space. They felt the excitement of discovering that other intelligent life existed in the universe. They experienced the hope that had driven humans to reach out to the galactic community, and they felt the crushing disappointment of rejection. The humiliation of being dismissed as too primitive, too violent, too young to matter. But then they experienced what came after. They felt the focused determination of an entire species deciding to prove the galaxy wrong. They experienced the breakthroughs as humans learned to transcend every limitation that had been considered universal. They felt the joy of discovery as humanity realized they could reshape reality itself through focused consciousness. They lived through 15 years of transformation. They experienced humans learning to exist as pure thought, to create matter from energy, to travel between dimensions, to become one with the fundamental forces of the universe. When the experience ended, several council members had collapsed. Others were making sounds that might have been weeping if their species was capable of tears. A few had simply shut down entirely, their minds overwhelmed by what they had witnessed. "We are no longer bound by your understanding of reality," Sarah continued. "We have transcended the limitations you thought were universal laws of nature. We have become something that your science says is impossible." The chamber began to fill with other figures. They looked human, but something was clearly different about them. Some appeared to exist in multiple dimensions at once, their forms shifting between different states of being. Others seemed to be made of living light that pulsed with awareness. A few appeared solid one moment and transparent the next, as if they were choosing which aspects of reality to participate in. Dr. James Kim stepped forward. He looked like the same scientist who had worked on quantum consciousness 15 years ago, but now the air around him sparkled with energy that responded to his thoughts. "We learned to use consciousness as a tool," he said, "not just to think with, but to reshape the quantum foundation of reality itself." Dr. Maria Santos appeared next to him, but she seemed to exist in several places at once. "We learned to evolve beyond the biological limitations that your species consider permanent. We became beings of pure possibility. More humans appeared, children who had been born during the isolation, now grown into something that defied every category the aliens used to understand life. Adults who had chosen to merge their consciousness with stars, with planets, with the empty space between galaxies. "We have fulfilled our vow," Sarah said. "We proved what humans could become when we stopped trying to fit into your narrow definitions of what was possible." She gestured, and the chamber filled with images of human space. Planets that had been created from nothing, stars that had been convinced to burn with new types of energy, empty space that had been filled with structures made of crystallized thought. "We have shown you that consciousness is not just a side effect of complex matter. It is the fundamental force that shapes reality. And humans, with our chaotic, emotional, primitive way of thinking, are the first species to learn how to use it properly." Counselor Vex Tar finally found his voice. What do you want from us?" Sarah's expression grew sad. "That's the wrong question. The question is, what place will you choose to take in the galaxy we're creating?" "Creating?" The word came from the Zephyrian representative, its crystal form ringing with fear. "The old galaxy was built on the assumption that reality has fixed rules," Sarah explained. "That matter and energy are separate from consciousness. That intelligence is limited by the physical structures that produce it. That death is final and change is slow." She spread her arms wide. "We have proven that all of those assumptions are wrong. Reality can be reshaped by focused will. Consciousness can exist independent of matter. Intelligence can transcend any physical limitation. Death is just another state of being that can be chosen or rejected." The chamber fell silent. The alien representatives were beginning to understand what they were facing. This was not a request for membership. This was not even a demand for recognition. This was something far more profound and terrifying. This was evolution in action, and they were being offered a choice: evolve with humanity or be left behind. "You're going to change everything," whispered the collective representative, its shared consciousness reeling from the implications. "Everything is already changing," Sarah replied. "The question is whether you want to be part of that change or whether you want to cling to the old ways until they become irrelevant." "And if we refuse?" Vextar asked. Sarah's expression grew even sadder. "Then you'll be like the trees that refuse to bend in a hurricane. You'll break, while the flexible things survive and grow stronger." One of the energy beings from the Luxari flickered with what might have been anger. "You think you can threaten us? We have weapons that can destroy entire star systems." Sarah looked at the Luxari with something that might have been pity. "Show me," she said simply. The Luxari being focused its energy, preparing to unleash a blast that could have vaporized a small moon. The energy built up, grew brighter, reached the point where it should have been released. Nothing happened. The Luxari tried again. Still nothing. The energy that should have been destructive simply wasn't. It was still there, but it no longer had the capacity to cause harm. "We don't fight wars anymore," Sarah explained. "We've moved beyond the need for violence. When everything can be reshaped by consciousness, destruction becomes just another form of creation." She looked around the chamber at the shocked alien faces. "We're not here to conquer you. We're not here to punish you for rejecting us. We're here to offer you the same gift we gave ourselves, the chance to become more than you ever thought possible." "And if we're not ready?" asked Professor Zixtel, the Zephyrian researcher who had dismissed Elena's warnings for 15 years. "Then you wait," Sarah said. "But the galaxy is changing whether you're ready or not. The old rules no longer apply. The old limitations no longer exist. You can be part of building something new, or you can watch it happen from the sidelines." She turned toward the chamber's exit. "We'll be here when you decide. We have all the time in the universe now." As she walked away, her final words echoed in the minds of every alien present. "We told you we would return as your equals or your betters. We never said which we preferred to be." The chamber fell into stunned silence. The galaxy's ancient rulers sat in their floating chairs, trying to comprehend what had just happened. They had expected many things from the humans: anger, revenge, weapons, war. They had never expected transcendence, and they had no idea how to respond to it. The change began within hours of humanity's return to the Galactic Council. The Karathi were the first to make contact. Their species had always been traders and adapters, quick to see new opportunities. When Captain Recoils' merchant vessel encountered a human ship near the border of Council space, she made a decision that would transform her entire civilization. "We wish to learn," she transmitted to the human vessel. The response came not through her communication system but directly into her mind. "Are you certain? Change cannot be undone once it begins." Captain Cole thought of her people, struggling to compete with the larger galactic powers, always working twice as hard for half the recognition. "We are certain." What happened next defied every law of physics she knew. The human ship seemed to merge with her vessel, but without any physical contact. Instead, her ship became something new. The metal hull remained, but now it pulsed with awareness. The computer systems expanded beyond their original programming. The entire vessel became a living extension of her consciousness. But more importantly, Captain Cole herself began to change. She could feel her mind expanding, connecting to a vast network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. She could sense other Karathi who were undergoing the same transformation. She could feel the gentle guidance of human minds helping her species take its first steps into a larger existence. Within a week, the entire Karathi civilization had volunteered for transformation. They became the first alien species to join what humanity called the Consciousness Collective. The hegemony tried to stop them. Vextar, still reeling from his encounter with Sarah Chen, ordered a full military assault on Karathi space. If the humans were spreading some kind of infection that changed other species, it had to be contained before it spread further. The hegemony fleet was massive. Thousands of warships carrying weapons that could crack planets. They had never lost a battle in their 10,000 years of galactic dominance. They encountered the Karathi defense fleet near their homeworld. The Karathi ships looked different now, organic curves mixed with geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow. But they were still recognizably Karathi vessels. The hegemony fleet opened fire. Nothing happened. The weapons fired. Energy beams and missiles left the hegemony ships exactly as they should have. But when they reached the Karathi vessels, they simply stopped being weapons. The energy became harmless light. The missiles became flowers that bloomed in the vacuum of space. "Your weapons cannot harm what you do not understand," came a voice in the minds of every hegemony crew member. It was Captain Cole, but her consciousness had expanded far beyond what any individual mind should be able to contain. "We do not wish to fight you," she continued, "but we will not allow you to prevent our growth. Go home, think about what you have seen. When you are ready to evolve beyond violence, we will be here." The hegemony fleet retreated in confusion. Their weapons, their tactics, their entire understanding of warfare had become useless in a single moment. Word of the incident spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication should have allowed. Species that had never considered challenging the hegemony began to wonder what the humans had really discovered during their 15 years of isolation. Some alien civilizations tried to study the transformation. The Zephyrians sent their most advanced philosophers to analyze what they called the human phenomenon. The collective deployed its vast mental networks to understand how consciousness could affect physical reality. But studying the transformation was like trying to understand music by examining the mathematics of sound waves. The real experience required participation, not observation. A few species chose to resist. The Xerian Empire, proud of their military traditions, announced that they would destroy humanity rather than allow their infection to spread further. The Xerian fleet never reached human space, not because they were stopped by human defenses, but because they gradually forgot why they were fighting. As they traveled toward their target, the anger and hatred that drove them simply faded away. By the time they reached the edge of human territory, they had forgotten that they had ever wanted to hurt anyone. Most of the Xerian soldiers chose to stay in human space and begin their own transformation. A few returned home to tell their people what they had experienced. The Xerian Empire quietly abandoned its military expansion and began focusing on internal development. But the most dramatic example of the new reality came when the Xerian Empire tried one final desperate attack. They launched a weapon designed to destroy entire solar systems, targeting Earth itself. The weapon reached Earth's solar system. It locked onto its target. It fired, and Earth wasn't there, not destroyed, not moved, simply not there in the way that physical objects are supposed to exist. Earth had become something between matter and consciousness, existing in a state that made traditional weapons meaningless. When the weapon finished firing at nothing, Earth returned to its normal existence. Completely unharmed, completely unchanged. The message was clear. Humanity had transcended the level of existence where violence was possible. That was when the real terror began. It wasn't fear of human weapons or human armies. It was fear of human transcendence itself. The ancient species of the galaxy realized they were facing something they had never encountered before. A civilization that had evolved beyond their ability to understand or control. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself in an impossible position. As the only human still working in alien space, she became an unofficial ambassador between the old galaxy and the new reality humanity was creating. "What do they want?" Vextar asked her during a private meeting. The ancient hegemony leader looked tired and confused, like someone who had woken up in a world he no longer recognized. "They want what they've always wanted," Elena replied. "To be accepted as equals. To be allowed to contribute to galactic civilization. To be treated with respect instead of dismissal. But they're not equal," Vextar protested. There's something we can't match or control," Elena nodded. "That's exactly what they tried to tell you 24 years ago. They said they would return as your equals or your betters. You chose to see them as inferiors instead. So what happens now?" Vextar asked. "Now you get to choose again," Elena said. "You can join the transformation and become part of something larger than any single species. You can remain as you are and coexist peacefully with the new reality, or you can try to fight it and discover that fighting consciousness itself is impossible." As word spread of what humans had become, the galaxy divided into 3 groups. The adapters, like the Karathi, chose transformation. They allowed human consciousness to guide their evolution into something beyond their original limitations. Species after species made this choice, discovering abilities they had never imagined possible. The observers chose to remain unchanged, but peaceful. They continued their traditional ways of life, while acknowledging that the rules of the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. Many became students of the new reality, trying to understand what consciousness could achieve without necessarily joining the transformation themselves. The resistors tried to maintain the old order through force. But every attempt at violence failed in increasingly impossible ways. Weapons became art, armies became gardens. Hatred became love so gradually that the resistors never noticed when their anger transformed into curiosity. Within 5 years, active resistance had ended. Not because it was defeated, but because it had evolved into something else. The Galactic Council still existed, but it no longer made laws for the galaxy. Instead, it became a place where different forms of consciousness could meet and share experiences. The old hierarchies of ancient versus young, advanced versus primitive, had become meaningless when any species could transcend its limitations through focused will and human guidance. Sarah Chen, now existing as something far beyond her original human form, occasionally visited the old council chambers. She appeared to alien delegations as whatever form would be most comfortable for them to interact with, sometimes human, sometimes energy, sometimes pure thought given temporary shape. We told you we would prove our worth, she reminded them during one such visit. We never said we would do it by becoming what you expected us to become. The Zephyrian representative, now enhanced by voluntary integration with human consciousness networks, chimed with what might have been laughter. We expected you to build bigger weapons. Instead, you made weapons irrelevant. We expected you to conquer territory, added the collective spokesperson, whose shared mind now included human perspectives alongside its original programming. Instead, you conquered the concept of limitation itself. Sarah's form shifted into something that seemed to be made of starlight and possibility. We told you that you judged us by our past instead of our potential. We showed you what happens when a species stops accepting that impossible means permanent. She paused, and her expression became thoughtful. But this is just the beginning. We've learned to transcend the limitations of our home galaxy. Now we're wondering what other ancient civilizations in other galaxies need to be shown what consciousness can truly accomplish. The alien representatives felt a familiar chill. They had grown comfortable with the new reality in their own galaxy.